Welcome to Making Happy Things. I'm Sue-Ching and today we're making the Tessellate Skirt. I think I've invented something really cute here, and I'm going to show you how to make it so you can make one too. It's called the Tessellate Skirt because, well, it's made up of all these repeating square shapes. I used linen napkins for mine, and if you're going to do the same, the first thing to know is that the size is a little bit limited. I'd suggest measuring your hip and waist first and checking that the size is right for you. The skirt is about 112 centimeters in circumference, or it's 22 inches when I've measured it flat. So to make the skirt, you'll need 7 napkins. I chose a variety of prints with a blue and white theme from my stash, and you'll also need a tea towel or other fabric to make the ties. I'm using standard size napkins, which measure roughly 45 centimeters square. Okay, so first things first, and as always, we remove the hems. I always say this is optional, but I do highly recommend this step as it reduces bulk. It makes sewing easier and means you have more control over finishing the seams on the inside of your garment. And for something like this skirt, we will be joining a lot of angles and corners. Removing the extra bulk is going to make the process much more enjoyable. I worked out my design placement earlier by testing out a few arrangements until I landed on one that I liked. I've memorized how that's going to look for when it comes time to assemble. Now we're going to start building our skirt using the napkins. We start from the middle and work our way out. Lay down your first napkin and rotate it so that it's on a 45-degree angle or looks like a diamond. And you repeat that for the next middle napkin and line them up at the corners at the center. Place another napkin to fit in the lower space like this. Let's join these 3 pieces together by stitching right sides together. I'm marking out my 1 centimeter seam allowance so you can see where I'll be stitching, and in this first join you can start your stitch line 1 centimeter down from the corner. Once that's been sewn, do the same with the other napkin, stitching right sides together with a 1 centimeter seam allowance the whole way along. You should now have something that looks like this. I'm using the overlocker to finish my seams as I go. I find it easier this way. Next, we'll add the lower skirt section. This is 1 napkin that's been cut in half on the diagonal to place into each section. Grab your chosen napkin and fold corner to corner on the diagonal and make a crease. Open back out and cut along the crease line to separate. Lay out the sewn panels and place your triangles either side of the lower napkin. They only fit a certain way, so rotate them until they fit nicely and you find the perfect fit. We'll sew along each edge to attach. Work through it by arranging the panels in place and flipping so that you have right sides together. Working this way means you know that you're sewing the right edges together. I don't pin, but go ahead and do that if you want to keep things in place as you stitch. Let's take them to the machine and get that done now. So now we've got this and we're building out our skirt panel by panel. I've noticed that some of my napkins have some overhang. They're often not perfectly even or symmetrical to begin with, so if you discover you have some unevenness, you can give them a little trim as you go to make sure edges align and are flush. Ah, that's better. Let's keep going. Let's insert another napkin here. This one will be attached to each of these edges here, so I'm laying in place and flipping it so it's right sides together. Sewing this panel requires some pivoting and maneuvering from that corner. You put your finger on there and add a pin into the corner to keep it in place. This is really important so you don't lose your alignment. Now pivot the napkin so that edges align and stitch along there. Once you've done that, come back and pivot the other edge, the free edge, back down the other way to align. I'm repositioning my pin so that the edge sits flat, and I'll sew along here now. Beautiful! That's what it looks like once that's stitched. We'll be repeating that technique on the next few panels. This is for the top of the skirt now, so like before, arrange your napkin in place facing up. Use the same process as you just did. Pin into that corner, pivot, and sew. Then pivot back down the other way and sew that edge together. Now you should have a large panel that looks like this. We'll start creating the tube skirt shape now. Lay out your whole large big panel that's facing the right way up so the top is at the top. And now, folding from the right hand side towards the middle, align the corner to the opposite corner. And using that same corner method, pin into the corner, pivot to align edges, and stitch. Adjust the pin and pivot back the other way and stitch right sides together. You should have something that looks like this. The skirt's really starting to take shape now. We'll need to add one more napkin to the top section so that it matches the other side. And that's right, we're going to use the pin and pivot method once again to do that. Before I sew that, I noticed some overhanging edges again, so I trim those off first. So find the spot where you'll be inserting the napkin, flip right sides together, pin at the corner and stitch one side, pivot, and then stitch the other side. Ah, it's looking great! Before moving on to the next steps of creating the ties and channel, I give everything a good press so that my seams are nice and flat, especially in those corner joins. Pressing during sewing is a step I'll never skip because it just makes everything so much better. It also helps set the seams. Now that's done, make a hem on the bottom edge by double folding roughly 1 centimeter and edge stitch all the way around so it's neatly finished, just like this. Put the skirt to the side for a moment to make the ties. I'm using a tea towel and I had cut the hems off earlier. To make things easy, I'm folding the tea towel in half along the long side and using the crease to cut in half. And I'll keep cutting in half like this until I end up with 8 strips. I've calculated that I'll only need to use 3 per tie, so if you were feeling mathy, you could divide the tea towel into 6. That would be less waste, but the tie would be slightly thicker. Up to you. I wasn't feeling mathy, so I did easy quarters. To create the tie, join the short ends right sides together for 3 of the pieces, so that you have one long piece. Repeat that for the second tie. Press the seams open, then press the edges in roughly 1 centimeter on both sides, and do the same for each tie. To finish the edge neatly, open up the strip on the end and fold the short end up, roughly 1 centimeter. Now refold where you've ironed it and then fold it in half. This creates a neat finished edge of the tie. Go over to your machine and sew that down, continuing to fold in half and edge stitch along the long edge. Repeat for both of the ties. One more press for good measure, and the ties are now finished. Let's go back to the skirt and create the channels at the top. Start by using a ruler to draw a line across the middle of the napkin from corner to corner. I work out that I'll need about 2.5 inches to accommodate my tie and create the channel. It should be twice the width of your tie, plus some extra for wiggle room and seam allowance. I'm being pretty generous with my measurements. There's nothing worse than cutting something too small. I've marked a line 2.5 inches above my first line and I'll cut along that line and repeat for the other side. On these little short edges on the sides, I'm finishing those by making a narrow hem and sewing it down. It should turn out something like this. Repeat it on all the sides. Time to sew the channels. Make your first fold at the first line you ruled corner to corner. This will create an even edge on the top of your skirt. Make the rest of the channel by folding the seam allowance and a second fold on the second line that you ruled. A quick check again to see how my tie will fit. Looks good. Repeat for both sides, then a quick press into place and I'll go over to the machine and stitch that down on both sides. The last step is to thread your ties through the channels. I'm using a bodkin, but if you don't have a bodkin, a safety pin works really well. Thread the ties, one into each side. You can see how the waist is adjustable here by the ties. And ta-da! The skirt is done. It turned out beautifully and the linen gives the skirt some lovely drape. Let me know if you make one and please like and subscribe if you like my sewing projects. Bye!